Way back in 2005, two brothers set off on a road trip that would save the world and change television.
Ernie and Bert?
No. For 15 seasons and 327 episodes, Supernatural took audiences on a wild ride of family, fate, and faith with a rocking soundtrack and a seriously cool car.
But that was then, Bobo, and this is now. And yes, the show has quote-unquote ended, but we're not quite done with the journey.
No, we're not.
And that's why we're watching it all over again, or for Rob and me, for the first time,
That's right.
diving deep into every episode of Supernatural with the fine folks who made it. And we're taking you along for the ride.
Whether you like it or not. I'm Rob Benedict. I played Chuck Shirley, a.k.a. God.
Spoiler!
Yeah, it is a bit of a spoiler, but hey, spoilers are fair game here.
Fine. And I'm Richard Speight Jr., and I played the Trickster, also known as the Archangel Gabriel, and I did a little bit of Loki work in there.
Okay, you know we're running out of time.
Okay, well, we'll be talking about the entire series, so whatever we say, accept it. You've been warned.
So buckle up and settle in.
Because this, my friend, is Supernatural, then and now.
Hey everybody, I'm Rob Benedict.
I'm Richard Speight Jr.
And we're here talking about Supernatural. We're on episode 108.
Bugs.
Bugs.
Not Bunny.
Not what?
Bugs
Not
Bunny.
Bunny. No, not Bunny.
Oh.
No, we're not doing the Bugs Bunny. Is a completely different show.
Right.
But we are talking about bugs. A lot has been said about this show, this episode over the years.
This is one of the most talked about episodes in the entire 15-year history of the show.
In my very first episode in season 4, my character who writes the books, Bugs is one of the episodes he talks about having written.
Right.
So it was the one I sort of knew about going in. So yeah, I was kind of excited to watch Bugs and get back into that episode and what it meant.
Well, give us a summary. Let's
Okay,
dive
what
in.
happens here is Sam and Dean catch wind of a strange death, written off as mad cow disease.
Do you notice that Sam and Dean catch a lot of wind?
They do catch a lot. There's a
Just
lot of wind being
FYI.
caught, but they never fart. However, the facts don't add up as they decide to make the trip to Oklahoma to investigate the location of the death, a new housing development. They find beetles at the site of the death.
Wait, the Fab Four?
Yeah, John, Paul, Ringo, and George.
Did they love it? Yeah.
But they also find the insect beetle, and they don't think much of it.
Nah.
But then later they meet Larry Pike.
Oh, Larry.
Yeah, one of the developers, and his son Matt,
Matt Pike?
who is obsessed with bugs.
Bunny?
Someone else dies, this time with spiders.
That's even creepier.
I'm noticing a little of a theme here.
Mm-hmm.
They suspect Matt, the crazy bug kid.
You always suspect the bug kid.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
However, ultimately, the homes are being built on the graves of indigenous people slaughtered by an American cavalry in a horrific story told to us by indigenous person on the show. And while dying, the chief at the time cursed the land to rise up against anyone who tries to live there. And we discover that it's once a year during the solstice, when the moon and the sun share the sky, that the bugs go, no, not so much.
Get up. Keep her moving. Nothing to see here.
And the boys survive a scary night in a house with bees to ride off into the sunset, never to be heard from again.
That's not true. The show was on the air for...
Oh, that's right, 15
15 more
seasons. That's right. Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Since I'm watching from the beginning, I didn't know if there was another episode.
Oh, so here's my question. I want an honest answer. Have you
Okay.
seen bugs before?
No.
Neither did I. So
Right.
this is the first time I saw the episode.
I've talked about it a lot because, again, I have a line about it in my first episode, but I never actually went back, sat down, and watched it beginning to end.
Okay, I did. This is the Rob and Rich review segment of the program.
So
I'm going to dive
yeah,
in. I want to dive
yeah,
in first
please.
because I'm saying this, and I'm not saying this because Rachel, the writer, is sitting 4 feet away
Right
from
next
you.
to us, yeah.
I'm saying this because I mean it.
Yes.
I don't understand why it's got negative press.
I agree. I was expecting something else.
I was ready for like a real turd fest, and it was actually a delight.
Yeah.
And again, it's not because you're sitting here.
No, and you're looking her in the eye as
I
you say
am,
this.
but,
But no, it really is true. I didn't. I agree. I don't know. Maybe things had been written about it, and look, it really is different than other episodes we've been watching, where the killer is a ghost or a
Sure.
person or.
But even your character later on in the series apologizes
for bugs.
Yeah. But I don't get it. I thought it was really, really well done.
I think maybe we'll get into it when we interview Rachel, but it could have had something to do with Kripke. It might have been hard to put it all together, making the bugs look real.
I've heard the comment that somebody said, well, it wasn't as scary as some of the episodes. Oh, I strongly object to that review because I think bugs are disgusting, and I thought it was incredibly creepy.
Right. Now, my only critique of the show is the fact that the boys, they survive the night with the bugs. It's pretty horrific. And then they get in their car and they drive away. But we never go, aren't we to assume that every year the bugs will be back at the solstice?
That's up to people in that town.
Screw 'em. Right. So they live through it. So they're like, all right, on to the next. But I mean, I would say to the people doing the development and the realtor guy, hey, maybe not so much on that land. Let's keep that land free. I think that's the lesson.
That would have been, people tape that area off.
Exactly.
Here was my, and this is just the product of TV that I thought was funny, is that the sun sets and here comes the swarm. And they start fending it off with the fire and they're running around and blocking all the windows and doors. And then they're up in the roof and, the bugs are eating through the roof.
Attic, we call it these days.
Oh, they're up in the attic, right. The kids today call it an attic.
Yeah, not a roof.
And the bugs are eating through the roof.
Uh-huh.
And then it's dawn.
And it's dawn. It's a quick night.
And I realized, this is taking place in the tundra. Where
it's short nights.
They only...
Sure nights.
Yeah, that explains what they should have had, like snow dogs go through there.
Yeah, it's Alaska.
Because literally, the sun rises about 19 minutes.
Yeah, well, it's one of those Hollywood
Hollywood nights.
Yeah, like when you watch those movies that take place in Los Angeles and they go from downtown to the beach in like 2 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing, just again, I'm just fascinated with the through line running through this season, what's going on in the boys' personal lives. There's still a lot of the references to the father and son issues that are going on, and Sam can kind of relate to what's going on with the son, Matt.
Sure.
And the father trying to control his life and things like that, and letting him do what he wants to do, go to college, that kind of thing.
Whereas Dean relates more to the spiders.
Sure.
And the bees.
Sure. He's always been more of a bee and spider guy. Also, there's this element of telling the truth. Be honest, being honest with each other, which is important to Sam. Not so much important to you, Rich.
Nope.
You like the lies.
That's true.
But again, funny things with Dean. I love when Dean goes out to take a shower in the steam shower that they have in these new houses, and Sam knocks on the door and Dean opens it up and he's got a towel wrapped around his head. That's comedy. And that's funny stuff. I had always heard that Dean doesn't really get to be funny until the episode where we've seen the clip where he gets scared he's scared of cats or something.
Yellow fever.
Yeah. But there's a lot of funny with that character.
Lots of funny.
Dean all the way through. And again, I'm really relating to Sam and Sam's struggle as the son with his distant from his father.
And Dean with the bees.
You and the bees. We're so lucky today to have the co-writer of this episode, credited as Rachel Nave. Her married name now is Rachel Dworkin, and the actor Tyler Johnston, who we've met at the conventions, and we're so excited to sit down and talk to him. Tyler Johnston, of course, who played Matt. Rich, excited?
Beside myself. Literally beside the writer. I mean, she's right here. She's just chomping at the bit to get in here and tell us we're nitwits for thinking what we think about the show. But I'm telling you, I've been dying to talk about the show because, Rachel, people, this is a much discussed show.
But in the podcast, we have not to have actually not in the room yet.
But I'm telling people she is. I'm breaking the fourth podcast wall.
That's right. Well, we might as well get into it.
Yeah.
Since you're talking to Rachel now anyway, you've already broken the wall.
Well, now people know she's here, but that's important. They should know she's here. We're that kind of podcast. We bring in real people.
We don't lie.
No.
You were into lying a second ago, and now all of a sudden you're changing to tune. All right, well, please welcome to the podcast, Rachel Nave Dworkin and Tyler Johnston. Hey, guys.
Hello.
Hi.
It's such a thrill to have you here. It's always fun to work with and talk to people who were there. And Rich and I are watching the show for the first time.
Boots on the ground.
Boots on the ground.
So here's a Hollywood question for you. Have you two ever met? Because I know you worked on the same episode, but it's written in Los Angeles and shot in Vancouver. Have you two ever actually met each other?
Just minutes ago.
Yeah, just via Zoom.
Via Zoom.
You heard it here, folks.
There you go.
Breaking ground.
I think people think we're all in when we're making TV, we're all in one giant warehouse doing it. And
Yeah.
It's actually very segmented as it is.
So you both have dealt with the fact that this is kind of a much talked about episode of Supernatural, sort of an infamous episode. Rich and I, seeing it for the first time, are not quite sure why, because we enjoyed it. It was gross. I'll give you that. It was gross. I don't love bugs.
No,
but I like the episode bugs.
I do too. I would love to know, because Rachel, I know you have a connection to Kripke. Let's talk about how you got involved to start with. How did you end up doing this?
Sure thing. So I went to college with Eric Kripke, and we all went to film school together. And after college, Eric seemed to become wildly successful instantly. And then I sort of toiled away at a lot of development jobs working for producers and things like that. And I finally decided to try my hand at writing and wrote a sample and got an agent. And Eric was, in hindsight, I just think it was incredibly generous of him to give my partner and I, who was another guy that we'd all gone to school to USC with, gave us what's called a freelance episode, which is we were not, full-time staff on the show, but they would throw someone a freelance. I think it was sort of a cheap way to get some episodes. This was back when you're doing 22 episodes in a season, which is much less common now, but for a small writing crew to get 22 episodes written is a lot of work. So you give one to some little newbie person, and Eric gave me an episode. It was great.
That's amazing. I mean, it's rare. I haven't really heard of that much at all. Like you have a writer's room, but to have a freelance episode, it's...
Back then, it was pretty common.
Okay.
I'm desperately trying to think of how much I got paid. I think it was very little. And so, again, it's a cheap way to get a draft out of someone.
Right.
But I also look back and think, wow, he gave us that episode in the first 13. I figured, he'd wait to see at least if he gets that back 9 pickup.
Right.
And for people at home who don't know what that means, usually a network will let you do 13 episodes, and then if it's going well, they'll order 9 more. And he gave us episode 8, which was surprising.
And when he gives you the episode, does he say, you're writing this episode, it's about bugs, it's about this and that?
No, not exactly. I remember coming into the writer's room, and again, this was a room that would have been a group of writers that had been working together for months probably, or weeks at least. Bill and I, who's my writing partner, we come in. I think we each had day jobs. We had to take time off work for this. This was like... a big deal.
Wow.
And so we had a week to come in, and I know there were a lot of different possible episode ideas up on the board. And I remember Eric saying, toaster oven to anyone who can break the bugs idea. I want to do a bugs episode. And I don't know how we must have come up with the basic idea. And I guess he was like, yeah, go for that. So...
Did you get a toaster oven?
Yeah, I was going to say $1 million question.
No, but I guess I got some residuals over the years, so that's good.
All right.
Yeah, you should be owed a freaking toaster oven.
Yeah, that sounds like an unfulfilled contract to me, but...
Talk about lies.
I smell lawsuit.
I thought that was a term that I just wasn't familiar with. I thought that was like a writer's term, toaster's
No, I
oven.
think that's an old-timey Eric Kripke reference to the way banks used to give away goofy appliances if they signed a client.
Well, first of all, I want to, on behalf of the production, I'm sorry that you got ripped off. That stinks.
Yeah.
You have a family. You deserve a toaster oven.
Give this woman a toaster oven. You have a family.
Maybe an air fryer these days, eh? Maybe
Exactly.
let's update it to an air fryer.
What else isn't equipped with a good toaster oven? So, and then Tyler, now you were one of the few people, I should say a handful of people through the years that has played 2 different roles on Supernatural.
Yes. Some of the fans like to think that it was Matt Pike who ran away from home, became Alfie, the hot dog vendor. And so some of the fans like to speculate that maybe the relationship between Dad and Matt didn't mend the way that we hoped at the end of that episode there. So some fans have that.
I like it.
I did, obviously we've met before personally in real life, but I had seen your later episodes, but I'd never seen this one. And you look exactly the same now.
Totally.
Then. So I'm like, hey, there's Tyler wearing a Beatles wig.
I was like, I shouldn't have shaved today. I would have looked way older, but I thought against it.
Tyler, how old were you when you shot this?
I was 18 years old.
Okay.
Oh, man.
It was probably my second job with actual lines. I'd done one guest star earlier, and then a number of actor roles where I would say one thing, teenager at the party number 3, or those type of roles, which were great learning experiences. And I remember I was working with my dad at the time. He owns an auto glass business here in Vancouver, and I just graduated high school. I was working with him, pulling out windshields and replacing tractor windshields, not glamorous stuff. I remember I got the call from my agent that I had booked this episode of Supernatural, and my dad jokes. He's like, you could not have left the work site any faster after your agent called. He's like, I swore you called your mom to pick you up right away. He likes to joke that I bailed on him as soon as I got the job. But I was 18 years old.
It's a good role. It's a great role.
Oh man, really good role.
Oh, and I hadn't watched that for 15 years until last night, and it was pretty cool to see. I learned a lot on those 6-7 days, and it was a jumping off point for me in my career, no question about it.
That's awesome.
Matt, I think if I remember correctly, you would never know this, but I'm pretty sure when we first wrote the script, it was supposed to be like a 10-year-old.
Oh, really?
But either Eric rewrote it to be a high
Right.
schooler, or they couldn't find anyone who was a decent actor, so they bumped up
Right.
the age.
Yeah.
So I was 18 going on 10.
Exactly.
Yeah, it worked.
So now, Rachel, you were saying that Eric kind of had it out there for the writers, like somebody try to break this story. When you break the story, is that something you present in person? Like you walk in the room like, okay, here's what we think it is? Or was that a written pitch?
It's a verbal pitch. We come in, we see all these ideas on the board. I think there was like a Chupacabra episode. There was a whatever episode, probably a lot of episodes that ended up finishing up that first season on the board already, just as like little 1 or 2 word, a Wendigo or whatever. So then we go home and kind of brainstorm all those ideas and come back the next day and give like a verbal pitch. And I guess we must have come up with, I kind of don't like to think that we came up with the cursed indigenous people's land, but I guess we did. I am still thinking we were greatly rewritten by Eric Kripke, and I blame this episode on Eric.
Telstra of it hangs in the balance.
The question I was going to ask actually is were you influenced by like Poltergeist, movie where they built a house on?
Of course.
You say influenced. I mean, I would have imagined that we would have avoided that like crazy. That's such the obvious connection there. But we must have, I feel bad. This was like 16 years ago, and I feel so bad that I don't have like the exact recall of what we pitched that day in the room.
No,
Well, that's the great thing about history. You can rewrite it.
Yeah,
We can just
exactly.
retell it in a new way. I hope you're enjoying the episode, but we need to pull over for a second for some messages. Thanks for listening, everybody. And now back to the episode.
So now I'm going to ask another 16-year-old question, but since he was trying so hard to break this and had sort of jokingly said, I'm going to give an appliance to whoever figures it out, was he elated when you like pitched that we were like, oh my gosh, you've done it? Did he leap from his seat? Was there a moment?
No, I think it was a much more subdued reaction. I really think it was more like, okay, yeah, maybe we go with that. Like, I think, and then he
And that's
sent,
how it happens in Hollywood. Everybody.
yeah, I don't remember. I remember it being like, give it a shot, Again, you have to remember we were getting paid next to nothing. We were sort of this throwaway job. So he could go send us in the other room with John Scheiben, who was his number 2 writer guy. And John got assigned essentially babysitting these 2 newbie writers, go in the other room for a few days and try to break this Bugs episode. So I'm not sure if they had a lot of high hopes for what we were going to come up with.
You've mentioned your writing partner, Bill Coakley.
Yes.
And what's he doing now?
That's a really good question. Bill and I broke up a long time ago, and, unfortunately, we haven't kept in that much touch, but
Broke up partner-wise.
Yes, we were never romantically linked. But, I think he's doing well. He directed a movie like last year, so good for him.
Okay, best of luck to Bill. Tyler, back to you, buddy. So your character loves bugs until the end. I mean, he's not so sure about bugs.
He throws them all in the garbage as if they just aren't living things.
Exactly.
It's like, wait a second.
Scrape.
Completely switches.
Yeah.
So you had to
12
handle.
hours.
You handled a praying mantis. You handled like a spider.
Yeah, it was kind of creepy.
Tarantula.
I mean, were you creeped out at
Were
all
you
by
creeped?
doing this stuff?
I was absolutely terrified. I know this is going to sound strange, but there was a man who pulled up in a white van, and he asked me to get in the back, and he had insects galore.
It had nothing to do with Supernatural, by the way.
Yeah, I was late to set that day. And he had bugs all over the inside. I remember I was handling like a big beetle. I have a picture of that. There was a tarantula walking on my face. He wanted to make sure I wasn't going to have a freak out when we got to camera.
Well, that's not going to help.
I was terrified. I still don't like bugs, at all.
I think that's a weird psychology. Like, I want to be sure you're good with flying, so I'm going to shove you out of an airplane.
Yeah. I'm going to push you off this cliff. You'll be fine. I
If
swear.
you're scared, then you're not the man for the job.
They did like a test before we went to camera as well to make sure that none of us were allergic to bees. So any crew members and cast members who had to be in that last couple scenes where the bees sort of overtook the house.
Yeah.
They had to do a check. So they had a little filter on our skin and put the bee stinger through the filter so the bees wouldn't die every time they test stung. And I remember just being like, okay, here we go. I've had a tarantula on my face. They've stabbed a bee into my arm and about to throw me in an attic, but they said like 10,000 bees or something on the day. There was thousands and thousands of bees.
Really?
A lot of bees.
Okay, so let's get into that. So that last sort of the climax of the episode, you're all in this attic.
Yeah.
Was it on a stage or were you actually in an attic?
it was in a stage, and I remember that was one of my first stage experiences, and just being overwhelmed by the magnitude of the sets and the props. And like there was one shot where there was bees covering the entire window, and I remember watching the crew set that up and just being fascinated how long shots take for like seconds on camera. That was my first moment of being like, wow, this is a huge ordeal to get this television show made.
And they had real bees in there.
Real bees. They released the bees into the attic, and then they realized right away that the bugs were going straight to the lights. So the bugs would be, some of them were frying, unfortunately, on these extremely hot lights, and they couldn't get the bees to do what they wanted.
They were non-union bees. You have to remember.
Oh,
these were...
man. It was
couldn't afford to get real bees.
Bee extras.
There's a lot of also fly and bee suits.
There were a lot
Flies
of
are cheaper.
Suits. There were a lot of suits. The crew, I think Jared mentioned this story, but there was a lot of crew members in the attic in bee suits.
Yeah.
And Kim Manners, knowing that maybe some of us weren't the most comfortable in this attic with tens of thousands of bees, he took off his bee suit and came in his shorts and his t-shirts.
Yeah. Well, we actually
solidarity.
We actually asked Jensen Ackles about that story, and we're gonna listen to what he had to say about that.
They had the whole set zipped up like it was
everybody's in hazmat
like it was
suits.
something out of E.T. Yeah. And yeah, all the whole crew is inside there with the bugs in full on bee gear, right? Mm-hmm. And Jared and I, they're calling us to set, and I get up to the zipper to enter the set, and I'm like, I just hear this,
yeah,
and I'm like, I'm not going in there. Yeah. And then I just hear from behind the monitors, I hear Kim just go, "Get your ass in there! I'm gonna beat your ass."
Second episode.
Yeah, he was like, "Get in there, boys! Get in there! I'm gonna beat your asses!" And so I think Jared yelled back, and he was like, "Kim, there's 60,000 bees in there. You get in there." And he goes, "Fine, God damn it, give me a bucket." Or no, he goes, Give me an apple box. And he had shorts and a t-shirt on, and he unzipped the thing, walked in with his apple box, sat down, was like, "Get your ass in here."
Oh my God.
No bee suit, no nothing.
Oh my God.
And I look at Jared, and I was like,
now we have to.
And that was a moment where I was like, man, this is, that was just a leader showing his leadership. And I didn't really appreciate that moment until a few years later into my career, where I realized that there might be a little bit of a hierarchy on set, and Kim, didn't have to do that. It was a really cool gesture.
It was.
When you're one of the few actors that we've talked to that's actually gotten to work with Kim, who's we've spoken about a lot. What was that experience like?
He was super nice, super gentle. I was brand new. It was probably my 8th or 10th day on set. So I was asking questions that I probably should have known the answer to. And he helped me through a lot of those scenes. Even looking back now, that one scene in the bedroom where I'm talking to Jared or Jensen on the phone saying that the bugs are coming, you need to get over here. I remember being so nervous for that scene because it was sort of my character's moment to ask the boys to come back and save my family. And Kim just calmed me down and walked me through the scene. And
that's so cool.
I left set feeling very, very uplifted.
That's great, man.
So at the time, you don't know you're working with a legend, probably. You're new.
Nope.
You're a young guy.
I had no idea.
So after the fact, you figured it out as the years went on that Kim Manners was a big deal.
Yes, absolutely. I did. Yeah. And I totally understand why. His behavior to everybody on set. And like I mentioned, that story of him in the attic, I understand why people would follow him, on set and anywhere. I'd say into war, but I didn't want
into an attic of bees.
That's
a great story. To have done that. Rachel, did you, sometimes you're writing in LA and the writers will fly to Vancouver. Did you go up there for the shooting of this?
No, we didn't. Again, we were kind of like these freelancers. We had to go back to our day jobs. I remember stressing out because it was taking a few days extra, and you can't.
What was your day job at the time?
At the time, I was working for an online marketing company.
Right, sure, like you do,
writing Google ads or something, and. Yeah, I remember being really stressed that I kept having to say, I actually need to take a few more days. But no, we didn't get to go to Vancouver, unfortunately.
Well, when your show was getting produced, were you aware of Kim Manners' pedigree? You got a good director?
Yeah, to know that not just that he was directing our episode, who had directed all these X-Files and stuff, that's wow. But I mentioned John Scheiben before too, who was the guy who was kind of who we worked with to write our episode. He had written a bunch of X-Files, and it just felt like, wow, for our first gig, like we're really working with some impressive people, even though we didn't get to really work with Kim. To know that he had gone on to do our episode was like, wow.
Were you involved in that process, like tone meetings and the rest that goes on?
No. I mean, it's interesting. Like, I then subsequently later married a writer who is a showrunner in TV. And so now I know what really all goes into producing an episode. And at the time, I had no idea. I just thought, I turned in my script and call me when it's going to be on. I didn't realize that real writers get to do a lot more stuff.
You're a real writer. Come on, that's a good. It's a really good episode of TV. I will say this: there's 327 episodes of Supernatural. Bugs is among the most talked about.
Yeah,
and there's something to be said for that, because even if it's talked about because of a mixed reaction, that's saying something to raise yourself from the other hundreds of episodes of this show is kind of cool. I mean, I think the episode, it's unfairly maligned often because I actually think it's as good as, there are excellent episodes of Supernatural, and then there's episodes of Supernatural. I don't see it being a bad episode.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, I was almost expecting it to look fakey or something that you think about, like, I don't know, some monster in a really bad costume being, laughed at. Nothing like that. Like, the bugs were real.
The plastic spiders.
The plastic spider didn't look real, and now looking back, the spiders coming out in the shower, look a bit fake.
Yeah.
I think the issue is the guys didn't do anything. In fact, I think there's like a line as they're running to the house to save the day where they've discovered it's a curse. And I think Dean says something like,
So how do we break a curse?
You don't break a curse. You get out of its way. We gotta get those people out now.
what? That's not like how heroes solve a crime. Like, and in other
lock yourself in the attic.
Most of the other Supernatural episodes, the guys have to do something clever and smart and heroic, not hide in an attic all night long. That's lame.
Jensen had some bug spray and a flamethrower.
Yeah,
he was throwing fire around.
Dude, I gotta say that there had to be a tube from that spray can down like a vat.
In real life, that would be gone in a second. You're right. They lasted through. They made it to daylight. Did you know, Rachel, that Larry, Joni, and Matthew are the names of Kripke's father, mother?
And I know them personally.
Really?
Yes.
No way.
Is that why you use their names?
No, I mean, Eric probably changed the names of those characters.
That's so funny.
But Dustin, who was the first guy who gets killed, the cable guy or whatever, that was my writing partner's nephew, Dustin.
The actor or the name?
No, the name.
Oh, funny.
Yeah.
He's a 40-year-old man.
And he really died. Sad.
Bill was 75 when we worked together.
It was a weird matchup.
Yeah, that scene's kind of terrifying. And again, that actor had to really work with bugs, like having bugs dumped all over his...
Oh, yeah, that dude. You had a cakewalk of a gig holding a tarantula compared to that guy.
Yeah.
His bugs were going all over him for a day rate. Like they shot him in and out on a Canadian day rate. Let me tell you something. Guess who's not getting covered with bugs for a Canadian day rate? This podcast host. No, thank you.
There's another death in this one I really like, which is the woman in the shower who isn't killed by the bugs so much as killed by running out of the shower because there are spiders coming out, because that's so terrifying that she actually just falls running away, and that's what kills her.
I know.
And then
Carrie Genzel's her name. She's a lovely lady.
Is that
Carrie
right?
Genzel.
You know her?
Yeah.
And Carrie Genzel was in the first episode of Supernatural I ever directed.
There you go.
Later on in season 11, it's called Just My Imagination.
Well, that's weird. So this has two actors who both came back to the show in later seasons.
Yeah,
Wow.
Indeed it does. And it's funny when you're auditioning people for Supernatural in Vancouver, you get the list of names and it says Tyler Johnston, and it'll say he appeared in season 1 episode Bugs.
Just so you know.
So
that.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so the executive producers know. So if you even be like, oh, that's the guy I want, back in LA, the writers go, okay, well, does it matter or does it not matter? And I don't think it ever, in the 11 episodes, 13, whatever how many I directed, I don't think it ever mattered that somebody had been in Supernatural before. Like if they were the right person for the role, we're like, use them.
Great. I mean, it provided a lot of jobs and a lot of opportunities for me and my peers up here in Vancouver.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. 15 years, 300 episodes.
Yeah. And you came back in season 8?
8, yeah, season 8. Did a couple episodes as an angel before I was stabbed in the heart. Spoiler alert. But,
Right. Oh,
great.
man.
Now I
We
need
haven't
to watch
watched it
the
yet,
show.
dude.
Oh,
Don't tell me who
shoot.
God is.
Okay.
So you came back and you did 3 episodes there, but that was a good, 8 years later? So you're,
That was a long time.
into your 20s.
The show had changed. It was, wasn't the same sort of gritty, dangerous looking. I mean, it still obviously was dangerous.
It wasn't Monster of the Week.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, it was a different vibe. Yeah.
And they fed you. You know, they had the money for lunch.
Yeah.
Back in the day. It was...
Back in we had to go kill our lunch.
Let me ask you this. When you came back to the show, did another guy in a different van pick you up and drive you around? That's a really creepy part. The scariest part of the story is that you blindly got in a van with a guy.
With bugs in his
Well, he
trunk.
was on the studio set, so I was like, hey, you must be trustworthy.
Hey, come
kid.
here.
Come here.
My favorite part is you getting out like, well, the bug wrangler really gave you the
We don't have a bug
What bug
wrangler.
wrangler?
What? Come here, kid.
Oh no.
Rachel, do you remember anything in writing it that you specifically put in? Like, ooh, that was mine. Like the name of the
Like
cable
Dustin,
guy.
yeah.
I really hope that mine was the Munsters line, because I think that's like the best line in the episode where Dean tells Sam.
So what are you saying? That Dad was disappointed in you?
Was. Is. Always has been.
Why would you think that?
Because I didn't want to bow hunt or hustle pool, because I wanted to go to school and live my life, which in our whacked out family made me the freak.
You were kind of like the blonde chick of the Munsters.
Yeah, that he's an outcast in their family and therefore is like the blonde chick from the Munsters, which
Yeah.
I think was a really
Right.
great line. And I hope that one was mine.
I think again,
It definitely
we
was.
can rewrite this.
Yeah,
You
this
know,
was your line.
the heart, like I remember the thing that I just really remember was they were still in the very early stages of this show. And I remember it was so hard to figure out how we were going to get the guys into each episode, how they were going to find out about the latest demonic whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember there being a lot of rules and a lot of, well, they have to find it. We have to show them, find it out. We can't just, they can't just stumble upon it. And so there was a lot of looking things up on the internet and them stumbling across things in newspapers and stuff. And so much time was spent trying to figure out how to get them into it. And I'm sure you, who've directed a bunch of episodes later on, and Tyler, who's been in more, know later on they said, oh, who cares about that? Let's just start the episode in the thing. But there was a lot of discussion about like, well, these are the rules of how we get them into it. And
I think there were so many rules in the first 5 seasons that got watered down as the show went on.
sure.
And showrunners were replaced with different people. Eric handed the baton to other people, and the baton kept getting handed. You'd be doing something like, ghosts can't go through walls. And they're like, well, this is a red ghost. Like, oh, red ghost. Okay, red ghosts go through walls. Or whatever it is.
Sometimes it felt a little lazy.
I want you guys in this podcast moving forward, find out how they made the transition from lame titles to awesome titles. Because season 1, there's like not a cool title in the bunch. It's they aren't special. And later on, the titles, are you there, God? It's me, Dean, or whatever. Like just these fabulous like references and Folsom's Prison Blues and like all these, when the levee breaks, you get all these great references to movies and songs and stuff. And I just want to know who decided that? Who decided, you know what, in the next season, let's have cool titles? Because season 1, they were terrible.
Probably not the person who named your episode Bugs.
Right. Everyone so
Probably
far,
not that guy.
the name of the bad guy is the name of the episode, right? Wendigo,
Wendigo.
Hookman,
Scarecrow.
Bugs,
Bugs.
Scarecrow. Yeah.
Mrs. King.
Ms. King. Was that one? Who's Mrs. King?
The Scarecrow, Mrs. King.
Oh, Scarecrow, right.
It's an old 1980s show. Rob.
Your hip references, they're just...
I think
really...
The Scarecrow, Mrs. King was a show created by Eugenie Singer.
there you go. There's
Ross
a good,
Lemming.
There's a good tie-in.
Yeah.
Tyler, so what was it like working with the boys at this point? Were they
Better
cool
than
with you?
Bugs?
Did they joke around with you? Were they sort of like playful older brothers with you?
They were very playful, very welcoming. I remember they had like a bunch of toys that they would get around on set. I think they had like a little scooter or something back then. I know it evolved over the years.
I
and they had
remember
all
the
sorts of-
scooters. Because I showed up season 2. I remember the scooters.
Yeah. And they had one of the guys had a dog on set, and
Yeah.
I think Jared was on Ellen or something during that time, and he invited me into his trailer to watch it with him. And
That's
I remember
cool.
just being like, man, these guys are being so nice to me. And, as a young actor, you remember those moments, right? And like, if you ever are in a position where you are one of the leads or one of the recurring characters, you remember moments like that.
Yeah.
How it made you feel as a young actor, as a new actor. And I make sure to do similar things now if I'm in a similar position, make people feel welcome and try and remember their first name if you can. Jared and Jensen are really, really good with that. When I came back season 8, I don't know if they did remember that I was in previous episodes, but they both came up to me and welcomed me back to the show. And, it was, they know how to make people feel special,
They do this game in the later seasons when we were on season 14, 15, where one would say the name of an episode and the other would say what season they thought that was in. So, I mean, they do think about it. It's not like it's they shoot it and it's never thought about again. And on a show like this, they did. People make impressions. Again, I think there's a reason too. You came back and you go to conventions and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I'm very happy to be a part of this family. I remember on the day we were joking, I kept saying, boys, like, if you need me to come with you, I'll hide in the trunk. I'll pop up next episode. Maybe you just need a third brother, maybe just a third younger brother. And,
Eric had something that the writers would do. Every script ended with "to be continued." And so I remember my first episode, it was a one-off episode, so I didn't know if I was coming back, and thankfully I did, but I remember thinking like, to be continued. So I'm definitely, next episode
this is my
in.
moment.
This is it. Yeah. What a cliffhanger. Turns out every script says "to be continued."
Honey, I'm buying a Beamer.
Yeah, seriously.
And finally, on the very last episode in season 15, it said the end, and that was a very emotional thing for everybody.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, again, thanks for the spoiler.
I'm sorry. At some point, it does end, Rich.
The show does end?
Yeah, it does. It does end.
Not in our hearts.
Yeah.
I've got a fun story. If is it story time?
Yes, please.
Yes.
I was in Los Angeles maybe 10 years ago. It was a long time ago, 8 years ago. I don't know. Time's weird these days. But I was auditioning for Kripke's next show, Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a call back. And I remember I was in the waiting room. There was like me and one other guy. And I walk around the corner. And in the room was Eric Kripke and Jon Favreau. And so I walk in a little nervous, young actor, a couple legends standing right in front of me. I got my sides. I'm ready to roll. And then Kripke looks at my resume. And he goes, "Oh, you're on Supernatural." I'm like, "I am." He goes, "What episode?" I was like, "I was in the Bugs episode." He goes, "Oh, yeah. A lot of our fans consider that our worst episode." It wasn't you. It wasn't you. The acting was fine.
Oh, no.
CGI, the bugs, the story points, we just could never nail it down. And the bugs, the CGI, he keeps going as to why this is the worst episode in their history.
Oh my God.
And I'm standing in front of him at this audition now, nervous as can be. And he's talking and talking and talking. I'm just kind of nodding my head. Yeah, it's the worst episode. Fans tell me all the time. And then Jon Favreau goes, "Hey, Kripke, just let's let the kid read." Yeah, thank you. And I did the read and it went really well. We did some direction and then I left. My agent called. They said they forgot to plug in the microphone. So I had to go back.
Are you serious?
I'm fully serious. I had to go back, do the audition again. Neither of them were there. It was a totally different dynamic.
Oh.
Didn't get the job, but I'll always remember that.
Dude.
And Kripke was being really nice when he was saying all these things. He was just making conversation.
Yeah.
And talking about the
That's
show.
not helpful, Kripke.
did the same
it was
thing.
so funny. Favreau's like, hey, let's just let
Can
the
we-
kid read. Like
yeah.
he's sweating buckets.
Yeah.
Right
It's
now.
not the
so
it's not
funny.
the talking that's bad. It's been like, oh, you were on the Titanic. Oh, I mean, it's like just to tear you, be like that's not helping.
And it went down. A lot of
man.
boats stayed afloat, but that one went down. That went on down.
No. Yeah, it was exactly what I needed to hear. Exactly what I needed to hear in that moment.
I have a similar story. I auditioned for them in the same room for that. Rich did too for that show.
Oh, cool.
And same thing. He was going off about the conventions, and I remember Favreau was like looking at his watch. Like, come on, let's go. Yeah, well,
That's a brutal that you had to go back and they weren't there.
Yeah.
And now you're like in an empty room with a
hours later. I was like, oh man, and the adrenaline that comes with those auditions, especially when there's people in the room. You know, it's like you can't replace that. And it wasn't the same take.
Yeah. Well, I'm here to say we're talking about it now in 2022. Yeah. I think that this episode holds up.
I do too. It gets 2 full beards from Rob and Rich.
2 full beards. And it holds up. It's scary. It's creepy. It fits right in with the genre. And it's what that.
And you got the brothers, Sam and Dean, they're working through their relationship with their dad. You're starting to establish, the type of dudes that they are and their feelings towards their family.
Exactly. Yeah,
there was some character development during that episode for sure.
And the bugs are gross. Yeah, the digital ones are lame, and the plastic ones on the towel are kind of like.
No, that's not either of your fault.
That's 16 years ago.
Unless
exactly.
Rachel, you didn't specify plastic spiders on the towel, right?
I didn't, but I read some interview with Kim Manners saying that they ended up basically having to digitally put all the bugs in, including the 40,000 bees that you endured, like that because they didn't show up on camera very well.
Yeah.
What a waste.
Yeah.
What a waste of your trauma.
One of them stung Jared, though. I think one of them stung Jared in the attic, so we'll always have that memory.
Wow.
By the way, stung him in the attic, did it?
Yes.
What do we? The attic sounds like a euphemism.
You know this story, huh? You know the story?
No.
Or what? I think it did sting him in his butt. I think if that's what you're insinuating.
Oh, nice.
I think he did get stung in the butt. I
Stung
think
me
he
in
sat
the
on one.
attic.
I think it means they stung him in the basement, but sure.
I'd love to interview that bee that stung him. And I
She's
do
long
it.
gone.
And I do it again. Well, we thoroughly enjoyed it. And,
Yes.
And appreciate both of you for being a part of this show, that what this podcast is all about is revisiting and praising what the show is and what it became. And
Yes,
what it's
and
about.
also to kill the mythology that this was a bad episode. It wasn't.
No.
I'm here to tell you, it's a good episode.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're very welcome.
I've never heard
We
that
needed to hear
before.
that.
Yeah.
I know
We needed to
that
hear
the
that.
creator of the show thinks differently. But I'm here
you know?
to say.
Yeah, what does he know?
What has he done
Kripke.
since?
But thank you so much, Tyler. We're going to speak to you again in season 8.
Oh, I
When
can't wait.
Rich and I will be well into our 80s. But
Maybe, but by the way, and then we'll know if you actually have some sort of weird chemical peel going on. We'll see how you look. You know what I mean? Like, at some point you got to age.
You gotta
dude.
age.
It's got to happen at some point. You're making us all feel weird.
I'll get off camera. I'll take off my wig, peel off my face, and it'll be the
Perfect.
real me. Yeah.
Perfect. Rachel, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
This is so fun, and the episode is such a classic, and it's great that you're actually able to come in and actually talk to us.
No problem. It was fun.
We appreciate it.
Nice to meet you, Rachel.
Nice to meet you.
we'll see you, buddy.
All right, guys.
Ahoy, Rich Speight here. Hope you're enjoying the episode, but we got to pull over for a second for some messages. Thanks for listening. Now back to the episode.
Well, that was great, talking to both of them.
It was so cool, and I also loved that they had never met.
Yeah.
Something interesting about how TV works, that you could have acted on a show that you've been talking about your whole career. You could have written that episode
Yeah.
and never met the actors who voiced the characters you created on paper.
That's what, that's what we're doing on this show, Rich. We're bringing people together.
Bringing people, and not just people, bringing bugs together.
Bringing bugs together.
People and bugs.
I liked this episode. I don't think it deserves the critique it got.
I concur.
I like it so much that I wrote a song about it, Rich.
Wow.
Yeah.
That inspired.
Yeah, you want to hear it?
I do.
Okay. Let's here's my song I wrote. It's called Bugs.
Good title.
Bugs. Reputation precedes you, Bugs. Your disbelievability needs you. Take my hand, let's go for a ride. Bugs. Get into my head, literally, bugs. Make me feel quite sickly, bugs. What universe are you living in, bugs? Creepy crawly on my skin, bugs.
There you go. Yeah. Thoughts?
The part about taking your hand and going along for the ride. Who's
The bugs are taking my hand.
And
I think what I'm saying is, you know what? I'm into it. I'm in for it. Take my hand. Let's go for a ride. I'll believe you, bugs.
You want the bugs to take your hand?
What I'm saying to the episode itself
Right.
is, I'm into you, bugs. Let's go. I'll go for the ride. I'll believe it.
Okay, I don't know how to ask this gingerly. Are you hitting on the episode bugs?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm glad you saw through that to what it really is.
I did.
Um,
Desperate cry for help.
Yeah. But yeah, it doesn't deserve all the flack.
No, and now it's got a dance hit sensation to back that up.
Yeah, I think it's ready for the charts. All right, let's get into the mythology.
Bum, 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 bum.
Insects are often a source of horror.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, but there's no specific urban legend that we draw from in
Yeah,
this.
because they're just gross. You don't need an urban legend to tell you that a roach is nasty.
Yeah. However, insects play into several indigenous peoples' mythologies,
Okay.
which I didn't know. There's a Hopi legend about how black beetles brought rain to land.
Well, that helps.
Yeah,
The land.
that's a good one. Many Plains tribes feature a spider as a rough trickster god. Versions include an inappropriate but entertaining rogue.
I'll take it.
That's so like you.
Yeah, man.
I'm going to start calling you,
What?
I don't know.
A spider?
Spider.
Makes no sense. You know, there are many B movies about bugs. Get it, Rob? Not A movies, but B movies.
It's what they call a play on words.
Yeah, man. That's why somebody wrote it and handed it to me like that. In 1954, Them.
Mm-hmm.
That's the title of the movie, Them.
Okay.
Yeah. In 1970,
it's a prequel to You.
Yeah, it is. And a poquel to They.
That's right. What is a poquel?
Poquel happens after.
Oh, really?
Prequel and poquel.
Really?
Sure.
Okay.
1974, there's The Killer Bees.
All right.
It was a made-for-TV movie. 1978, The Swarm.
I remember that one.
Yeah. And in 1993, Ticks, a direct-to-video featuring Seth Green and Clint Howard. And
Sounds like a winner.
I still feel like this should be mentioned. There's a movie called The Bee Movie.
Are bees in that movie?
Cartoon bees.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, well, there's also Bugs, the cartoon movie Bugs.
And there's also Bugs Bunny, who
Right.
gets ignored this entire conversation.
Well, it doesn't really line up.
Is his name Bugs?
Another great bug story is Stephen King's 1982 Creep Show, which contained the story They're Creeping on You about murderous roaches.
There's so many bugs in that movie. That movie is so
It's
awful. It's so
It's
gross.
so gross.
God, I hate that movie.
Well, Supernatural didn't fail to live up to this standard.
Yeah, well. It's time for trivia and fun facts.
Trivia, fun facts.
Pike is the fraternity Kripke was a member of in college. That's right, Eric Kripke was a member of Pike.
Hey, fun fact, so was I.
That's a really fun fact.
Yeah, I was also a Pike. Pi Kappa Alpha.
The actors had cuffs sewn into their wardrobes to avoid the bees getting in their pants and up their sleeves. However, everyone still got stung. And if Tyler Johnston is to be believed, Jared Padalecki got stung on the tush.
Stung on the Tush, which is the name of my new biography.
Well, that's it for this episode. Bugs, I hope we've debunked the myth that it is a real dumpster fire. It's not. It's a darn fine episode that's much maligned, and we won't have it. Not on our watch.
I hope this episode of the podcast isn't the least heard podcast of our episode from season 1.
Well, if it is, no one will hear you voice that concern because they wouldn't be listening.
True.
Please go subscribe to Supernatural Then and Now and listen to us every week as we walk through every swinging episode of Supernatural ever shot.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. This episode stars Jared Padalecki as Sam Winchester and Jensen Ackles as Dean Winchester.
Guest stars include Andrew Arley as Larry Pike.
This episode was edited by Paul Karasik.
Music by Jay Gruska.
Executive produced by Eric Kripke and Robert Singer.
The original broadcast features some amazing music, including Def Leppard.
Scorpions.
It first aired November 8, 2005.
This episode of Supernatural Then and Now was hosted and executive produced by Richard Speight Jr. and Rob Benedict.
Produced by Stephen Hine, written by Stephen Hine and Haida Holscher.
Audio engineering by Caitlin Hawley.
And edited and associate produced by Trey Booty.
Music provided by Tim Wynn.
The episode was recorded with the help of Sonic Fuel Studios.
This podcast is from Story Mill Media.
For news on this and other podcasts, follow Story Mill Media on Instagram and Twitter.
Okay, hold on, we're moving.
What am I doing?
You're going
staying
to hang
right
out
there.
first.
Oh, okay.
So you're
Okay.
you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Should we get into it or should we wait for Tyler?
Get into it.
Wait for Tyler?
Okay. Screw him.
Am I gonna? Do I wear this? I'm gonna.
Yeah,
have to
I
show
would.
Tyler.
It really sounds like a podcast. If you would.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Otherwise, yes, it sounds like very, very radio professional doing it.
Well, I got to save my questions for when we go on, but I am
Okay.
very curious as to why this became this.
But don't
infamous
ask.
episode.
Don't ask it.
I feel like I'm not gonna have a lot of the answers you're looking for.
That's okay. Well, I love this episode. Like we said, let me tone that down. And they find beetles.
The Fab Four?
Yeah, they find all four: John, Paul, and Ringo. Just John, Paul, and Ringo. George isn't there because he quit the night before. That's a niche tie-in to Get Back, the Beatles documentary.
It's going long. You know, there are many B movies about bugs. There's one called The B Movie. Proofread, schmoofread. Sure thing, buddy. I love you.
All right, your snacks, if you're hungry. You're fired.
You're fired. No, you're fired.
Story Mill Media.